Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of How Leaders Lead with David Novak. I am so excited about today's guest. It's Coach Shea Ralph, who is the head coach of the Vanderbilt women's basketball team. She just got named SEC Coach of the Year and National Coach of the Year, and she's leading Vanderbilt to the NCAA tournament as we speak. When Shea walked in as head coach at Vandy, she inherited a broken program. There wasn't much trust and there wasn't much talent. But 5 years later, she's turned the team around and Vanderbilt is on a roll. Shea's got a unique story and perspective that's helped drive her success at Vanderbilt. And in today's episode, you'll learn how she motivates her team to get great results without letting those results define who they are. Anchor down and enjoy this episode.
Now, you and I are talking the week of March Madness as the tip-offs are about ready, and Vanderbilt is a number 2 seed. As the leader, what's going on in your mind right now?
I've been here before, so not with this team, but this is what we do. This is the best part of the year when you play college basketball. This is the goal for many of the athletes and coaches that are blessed to play this game at this level. So really, for me, I think about how we prepare for these moments way in advance of meeting them, right? So the preparation for the moment that we met yesterday and seeing our name on the screen as a number 2 seed, which we haven't seen yet before, was that we've earned it, but we have to continue to earn it every day. And we stay super process oriented here. Focusing on the day-to-day is really important, and it won't change now.
You are going on the big stage now, and you see so many upsets. How do you get your team just to settle in and not change?
For us, at least, for me, it's just really focusing on what's right in front of you. And the goal is to win, and you want to talk about the Sweet 16 and all the matchups, and that's what everyone's talking about, the storylines. But I had a dear friend of mine, a fellow coach, a colleague, liken this part of where we're at in our season to the game of Tetris, right? So if you play the game of Tetris and you have that one piece that's falling out of the sky, and if you don't manage that piece well, then all the other ones aren't going to stack up. If you play it perfectly, then it eliminates the line and you get to play the next piece perfectly. So I'm looking at our season right now as a 1-game season. So we have to focus on that, right? Playing that game perfectly.
When I was CEO, unfortunately, we had to worry about the quarterly earnings all the time. And, sometimes we'd have a tough quarter and you had to get the team to bounce back. And in your particular situation, you just came off the SEC tournament and you had a tough loss to Ole Miss. What do you refuse to let your team believe right now? I mean, how do you get them? I had the tough quarter every now and then. How do you get the team to bounce back and understand who they really are after a loss that, I'm sure that they think they shouldn't have had?
The way that I run our program, we are grounded in standards and values. We are grounded in truth, not in narrative, not in what, gets clicks on social media or what stories are being told. We are the only people who know what we are about. We are the only people who have committed to those standards and values, and we are the ones that get to live them day in and day out. So that means that we may have an unfavorable result, but that doesn't define us. That game at Ole Miss didn't define who we are. We've had a great season. We didn't play well that game. We knew the things that we tripped up on. And when we do those things the way that we're capable of doing them, we are a team capable of beating any team in the country. And when we're not, we can lose to anyone. And that's the truth. And so we didn't do that day, and it resulted in a loss.
And, one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, because you seem to be very calm, mild-mannered. You actually got thrown out of the game. I mean, has that ever happened before? And let me ask you, tell me the truth. Was that did you do it on purpose? Because sometimes coaches will throw the fit to get the team going, because your team did go on a run after you got kicked out. Did you do it on purpose or what?
No, it's so funny. That's been the topic of conversation here the last week amongst my team and staff, because I am pretty reserved. I am competitive. I was trying to get a technical. I knew going out to half court that I was going to get a technical foul. I was unhappy with a lot of the things that were outside of our control in that game. And I said, something to a ref, which I knew was going to get me a technical foul. But then I thought, well, I got the technical. I'm just going to say one more thing to this guy over here. And, and then I got thrown out. That was not something that I was trying to do on purpose. Now, when I watch back, I can see why people would think, because I probably shouldn't have said the next thing. But, we're in the SEC conference and you got Kim Mulkey and Vic Schaefer and Don Staley. I'm like, I'm not going to get kicked out for this. And they kicked me out. But my team's response was incredible. And that's what I mean. Like, things happen the way that they should. And if I had known that they would respond that way, I would have gotten kicked out sooner.
That's funny. Well, you were having so much fun getting that technical, you just had to keep going. You couldn't stop. Do you have to do things to like keep your emotions in check when you go into a game, and at times like this as a coach, or you just let it roll?
I've spent a lot of time, especially when I became a head coach, on learning how to manage my own emotions, manage my own expectations, my own competitive drive. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about me. This is their journey. This is the team that I have. They don't ever get these years back. And I've been coaching now for almost 25 years. And I'll have another team next year and the year after that. But this is the last time this team will be together. So when I first became a head coach, it took me a minute to figure out who I was, because I worked for Coach Ariema and I played for Coach Ariema, but my demeanor is not like his. And so I felt like I had to be something different than who I was to be a good head coach. And that actually proved to be very untrue. And I spent a lot of time, I'm very faithful, spiritual. So now I spend time in the morning just grounding myself in my faith, in my purpose, and the things that make me who I am that are outside of coaching. And that keeps me calm and available to show up for my team in any and every way they need.
I got to hear the story of how you got the nickname of Tournament Shay.
No, who told you that? That's old.
I've got my, sources. Tournament
Shay. It was the practices that, after our conference tournament, I think just the level of attention to detail, the sense of urgency. I like competing. I love to win. And what's a better tournament to win, or championship to win, or trophy to win than March Madness, the NCAA tournament in women's basketball. That's when I knew I needed to play my best. And that's what I lived for. Those moments as a competitor were what I lived for. So I would always ratchet up a notch. And just like, there's a sense of urgency here. I want to play great. I want to play great for my team. I want to win.
You won a lot when you're Connecticut as a player, a national champion, 6 times as an assistant coach. What's the biggest leadership lesson winning like that in such a big way taught you?
There's no secret formula. I think when you are on the outside looking into the program that I was a part of at UConn and the way that we won, the championships that we won, the fashion that we won them in, it's like, well, there's a reason, right? They have all the best players. And their conference is weak, and all the excuses. But the reality was, we did the work really well, and this is the most important part: we had the right people. So you have lots of talent and skill in the world, and business and sports and all the things, right, that we're trying to do. But you have to have the right people that have the intangible characteristics that you cannot give them, that you cannot coach them to have. They have to have them. And then you have to continue to inspire them and guide them to become better basketball players. But you can't coach those intangible qualities that make a winner a winner. You can't. And I thought that was what we did really well at UConn, was that we just brought winners into the program, and then we coached basketball.
And what's a national championship story that gives us a peek into your leadership style?
Gosh, I don't even know. A national championship story, or just a story?
A national championship story. When you're on that big stage, you had the big game.
What stuck out to me, especially when we won the first one when I was a player, it was so amazing, right? That moment of I've worked my whole life, and this many years in college, and I had been through 2 ACLs and lots of really tough things, like all athletes go through. But then that moment leaves. You celebrate. You get the trophy, you go to the hotel, and then you wake up the next morning and you go to your parade, and it's like, okay, are you going to do it again next year? And I was like, what? Yeah. Wow. That's it. We're just, we're going to keep it moving. So I think two things about that taught me was like, number one, we're going to celebrate everything along the way. Here, we're going to celebrate all the small victories, the ones that other people are like, okay, no big deal. We're going to celebrate them here because that's part of it. That's part of what this journey is leading us to when we get to where we're going, and that's championships. And the second part of it is like, we're not going to get too high and too low. So when we win, when we lose, we're just going to stick to like celebrating those things. And then we got to get back to work, because either way, we're going to learn something about ourselves, and there's always a way to improve.
When I was at Pepsi and then at Yum Brands, we would hire people from these great companies like Procter and Gamble, great packaged goods companies like General Mills, and they had this great pedigree, just like yours at UConn. You come from UConn, and they come in and they talk. When I was at Procter, we did it this way. When I was at GM, we did. Did you go through that? Or did people get sick of hearing about UConn? Or how'd you manage? How did you manage the fact that you had such a great pedigree and you had been a part of so many things? Did people get sick of hearing about UConn, or do you even mention UConn?
No, I try really hard not to here. It is such a huge part of my story, but also, UConn gave me the same thing that Vanderbilt's giving me, which was an opportunity. And so like, I do have this pedigree, but it was early on, it was tough. I will tell you the truth. I tried to run UConn's offense here my first year, and we were averaging 40 points a game, like 5 games into the season. And it's like, okay, this isn't something like I have to do this my way. I have to find out who I am as a coach, what I brought to the table that contributed to all the success that we have. And that's important, right? I am not UConn. I am me. And what I brought to the table helped us win, I hope, helped us be really great, helped those players grow. And it'll be something that they remember for the rest of their basketball careers, or hopefully their lives. It's the same thing I'm doing here. I just had to kind of ground myself. Who am I as a coach? What is important? What did I learn that I can help teach these young people about the game of basketball, about competing, about confidence, and about just kind of living a certain way so that they can be successful well beyond the years that they're playing in basketball. But you're right. Initially it was a little bit of a shock, simply because I spent half my life there.
You mentioned confidence, and I heard you talk about confidence in the sense that it's important to have elite confidence. I hadn't heard anybody use that phrase before, but what does elite confidence mean to you?
Elite confidence means that you trust your preparation, that you do the work necessary to have the results that you want, but that you're not defined by the results, right? You trust your preparation. I'm going to work. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to make sure that I take care of my business, and I'm going to prepare. And then I'm going to go play this game. And whether we win or lose, it's not going to define me. It's not going to shake my confidence. It's not going to make me believe I'm something I'm not, whether that's better or worse than I actually am. You got to stay grounded in who you are. You got to know who you are, and you have to operate like that every single day, no matter what. That is elite confidence.
And what was it, Shea, that made you want to get into coaching to begin with?
So when I was growing up in North Carolina, we had, my mom was a basketball player at North Carolina, a really great one. And so I was in sports pretty early. I grew up in Fayetteville, and there wasn't a lot of like great female athletes at that time in that space. But I knew that I wanted to be a great one. And I also knew like my path probably was going to be to get a scholarship. And I wanted to leave so that I could figure out who I was, because my mom was like a big name in the area and had done a lot of great things. I wanted to bet on myself a little bit. And so when I went to UConn, I didn't know anybody. I had no idea what I'd gotten myself into. And, I didn't have a car. I couldn't drive home because it was really hard. I wanted to leave early on. I'm like, this is a lot more than I thought it was going to be. But the coaches that I had, the mentors that I had, from early on, always pushed me from grade school, middle school, high school, AAU. And then I got to college. They changed my life because they wouldn't allow me to be anything less. They wouldn't allow me to give up on myself. They wouldn't allow me to not show up and do the things that I could do. And they guided me through all those tough moments. So I figure what's a better path in life? If I can't play basketball until I die, which I can't, then what's a better path in life to help someone else achieve their dreams and reach beyond their potential that they even knew was possible for themselves? Because of those people, my life was changed. And I want to do the same thing now.
That's great. And your first coaching job, as I understand it, was at Pitt. What did that job teach you?
How to lose.
and how do you lose?
It taught me how to lose without losing myself. It taught me, I think I lost like 10 games in college in the 5 years I was there. And we lost 22 games my first year at Pitt. And I had no idea, like, how do you continue to encourage kids? How do you continue to, help them believe that they can accomplish things and, keep their head above water? I had not seen any kind of losing like that ever in my life. But I knew that we were just trying to maximize our true full potential as a team that we were then, right? And then we were going to continue to build on that. So thank goodness for Agnes Baronato, the head coach there, that hired me. I had no experience. And she and the staff that was there with her really helped me learn what it looked like to build a program. So at UConn, I was on the tail end of the building. They had already won a national championship, and I was like their first national recruit. But we didn't lose a lot. And at Pitt, we were talking about our goal is a Sweet 16, and we win 6 games in our first year. Like, what does that look like? And how do you marry the two? And how do you get from here to here? And I learned that there. I learned how to build a program, how to stay really focused on the process, how to infuse positivity when all that's happening is like negativity around the results, but you can see the growth. And it also taught me how to stay measured, right? How to just stay measured as a coach and a human being and ground myself outside of the results is what we're preaching now. I learned that at Pittsburgh.
And then you go to UConn and you stay as an assistant for 13 seasons. And I thought that was fascinating. I know Coach Auriemma is a great coach and there's a lot to learn and it was your alma mater and all that. But 13 seasons as an assistant, being in a support role, when you're a leader, that had to be a little tough.
Not really. I think it wasn't for me. I can see how it would be tough for others. I felt like my role there was really important and that I was valued. I felt like I was learning every single year. It would be different if I didn't feel that. Coach Auriemma at the time as well was the Olympic coach. So he was spending a lot of time with USA Basketball. He was the Olympic coach for 2 straight Olympics. We had a lot of responsibility as assistants. He gave us a lot of responsibility. He wasn't a micromanager. He helped me grow into really learning how to be, a head coach just by the ways that he trusted me and the responsibility he gave us outside of his actual role, which was really cool. And then, it's also part of who I am. I helped build that. The things that I was doing on a day-to-day basis to me mattered and they were valuable. And as long as I'm still learning, then I'm good where I'm at. And I knew at some point, fate would tap me on the shoulder and that there would be an opportunity. And my only job outside of my job at UConn of coaching was to be prepared for that moment. I might not be ready, but I was going to be prepared because I was going to make sure that I did the work.
That's great. I remember one of my mentors said, I know you want to be a president or a CEO someday. Just why don't you work on being a good one and then see what happens, Right. I thought that was pretty good. But you got some great experience there. And I imagine that you felt like a partner there.
I did. I felt like a partner. And like that's kind of the environment that I wanted to create here. I think anybody, like we all want to do great things and somebody is going to be the leader, right? Someone is going to be the head coach. But I know my weaknesses and I know my strengths and I need to be confident enough to put people around me who fill those gaps. Is exactly what I did at UConn. And I felt like I was really good at that. And then here I have gaps as a head coach because I was an assistant for my whole career. And I'm learning those kind of as I go. But I have hired great people who are loyal, who fill those gaps, who are talented and skilled. But again, going back to what I said earlier about what the magic is at UConn is that they're the great people. They're the right people. For me to be able to do my job well, I know I need a team full of great people who can do their job well as well.
So you go to Vanderbilt 5 years ago. What'd you inherit when you walked in the door?
Well, so when we got here, it was after COVID, right? So we got here in 2021. It was right after the bubble season. They had, and everyone was in the bubble. And this team was a little bit broken. They were one of 3 teams, I think, in Division I that opted out of the season. There was a ton of injuries. There was a ton of uncertainty. I think the 2 of their best players, 2 or 3 of the best players had already transferred out before I even got hired. It became more about healing and just really creating a safe environment where we could build the foundation of a culture that could be a championship culture and a winning culture. But it really started with just building relationships with the people here. And we didn't inherit a lot of winning, but we had inherited some really good people. And we had a strong community around us that gave us a great place to start.
What did you see that you knew you had to name out loud, even back then when it was hard for people to hear?
Lack of connection, lack of trust, lack of talent, a lack of like a real understanding of what this looks like to be a part of and what we're capable of. And that's what I mean. Like it wasn't even their fault. And so in that way, it shouldn't be hard to hear. We're all here now. So let's make sure that we bring our best to the table. And we've got to take 4 steps backwards and really start with our people and pour into our people so that when we start to coach them and teach them and guide them, they will trust us and they will follow us. But we have to start there. And that was really it.
Once you defined reality for your staff and your team, how'd you create enough hope that people would actually believe that things are going to change? Because when you've got a history of losing or not being at the top, you got to get people to believe. It's sort of like that Ted Lasso where he puts the belief sign up on the wall.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably twofold for me. The first is that Vanderbilt has a storied tradition of success. So before those 5 years, before we got here, before I was hired, they were really, really good. They were going to I think it was somewhere in the 20s, 25 straight NCAA tournaments. They were going to Sweet 16s and Elite 8s. They won SEC championships. I hired an assistant coach who was an All-American here and won an SEC championship here and went to an Elite 8. So someone who had walked in the shoes that our student athletes were wanting to walk in. And while the team that we took over had lost a lot, I haven't. And Vanderbilt in general hasn't. And I think it was more just having faith and this is what we're here to restore. This is what we're here to revitalize. And this is how we're going to do it. I need you 100% on board because this train is moving in that direction and we're not going backwards. So if you want on this train, you got to be on board and we're moving in that direction.
All right, throw me in, coach. I'm ready to go. Before this season, Vandy was picked 8th in the preseason SEC poll. And you start out 20-0. What does it feel like to be dissed like that? And how did you use that lack of respect to drive your team, or did you?
Yeah, I don't care. Respectfully, I don't care where people rank us. I know that those things that you vote on are subjective. Coaches vote on that. They vote on awards. Awards that we get are voted on. And I know there's a lot of thought that goes into it. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I want to win things that you can't vote on. I care about the things you can't vote on. So where we are in the preseason poll, it doesn't matter to me. And, until we continue to go in the direction we're going and do some of the things like we've done this year to make people understand exactly what we're capable of, that we're not going anywhere, that we are here to win championships, then that's where they're going to vote us. But as we continue to take steps in the right direction and check off boxes in order for us to be formidable and respectable, then they'll vote us what they vote us next year or the year after. I'm only concerned with where did we end up? Did we end up second? We ended up second, right? I knew that this team was capable of that finish. I don't care what other people think, but I know what I think and I know what they think. And that's all that can matter to us.
I've heard you say something that I found really interesting. I'm the weather. What do you mean by that?
The way that I show up matters. So we started talking earlier about how I have a calm demeanor and, I am a certain way because that's what my group needs from me. When I come in here and I'm throwing lightning bolts and thunderclouds and my demeanor is not bringing great energy, I'm taking energy from people. They're walking on eggshells around me now. What's wrong with coach? Oh, now there's a time and a place for that. But if I'm angry, I'm going to tell you I'm angry and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to be really direct about it. But when I show up every day, whether it's a great day or a tough day or a long day or a short day, I am the weather. When I walk in, I want people to feel like, hey, she's ready to go. It's sunshine today. Maybe a little wind gusts from time to time, to get people moving. But I'm going to show up and be very, very, very dependable in the way that people can interact with me. And I'm not a moody person, and I don't want people that are moody around me. There's too much going on. This environment's high pressure, high intense. I got to show up a certain way, and I got to be that way all the time so that my team understands who I am and what they're going to get from me.
Hello, friends. I hope you're loving this conversation between David and Coach Ralph. As always, stay tuned to the very end of the episode. David and I are going to debrief some of the concepts that he talks about with Coach Ralph so that you have something really tangible that you can apply to your leadership and to your life. Enjoy the rest of this conversation, and I will see you at the debrief.
You referred to your faith a little bit earlier about how you use that to sort of ground you every day. Is there anything else you do to make sure that the weather report on you is pretty good every day?
The weather report, it is my faith. 100% is the number one thing. And the second thing, 1A, my faith, my relationship with God. 1A is my family. I'm a mother. I have a 7-year-old daughter. I'm a wife. My mother moved here to live in this area so she could help with our daughter. My sister has 3 kids. We have family around the area. And then, for me, no matter if I have a great day or a bad day, when I show up at home, I'm mommy and my daughter needs a snack and she needs me to give her a bath and will you watch a movie? And these are the days that I'm never going to get back. So I will never take that for granted, but it's also been a great blessing for me to be a mom and a wife because it has taught me the true meaning of consistency and just showing up for the people that need you to show up for them, no matter what's going on for you.
And, as I understand as well, you're in your program, your team created 5 standards and you had the team develop those standards with you. Or maybe by themselves. Tell us about the process you use to get ownership on what your team is really going to stand for.
It's a great question. And we felt like we were missing that, especially this year. I had come in and laid out the standards and the values as the head coach. And my staff had done work around it. And we just kind of gave them to our team, like, this is what we're about. And I did feel like there was a lack of ownership around those. And so as we were brainstorming last summer about how we could help them understand that they needed to take more ownership, the idea of them coming up with them, but the process of it, not just like, we're going to do this one day, right? It was a weeks long process. And we involved ourselves just a little bit, but then I connected them with a former general here that works at Vanderbilt, that has a military scholar program at Vanderbilt and works with a bunch of the teams here in terms of team building and leadership councils. He has been such a blessing to our program. He came in and just kind of I think when we removed ourselves from the room, the players felt like they could have more open conversations with themselves. They were able to kind of bounce some ideas off of General Brower and his experience in war and leading a group of young men, just like we were leading them and just like they were trying to lead each other. All of that turned into them defining who they wanted to be this year. This is who we want to be. These are our standards, and we're going to talk about them and live them every single day. It was really, really cool. It kind of took on a life of its own. But the process of it was awesome to witness.
Now, I understand you get to pick one. of
Yes.
those. What was yours?
Be a good person.
Be a good person. And give me a couple examples of the others.
Be a good person is mine. The team's was be a soldier, positive voice, unity, and belief.
One thing I know you obviously do is you watch a lot of film. You got to watch a lot of film. Uh, do you watch a lot of film at on what you do as a coach as well? I mean, I know players watch film and you watch other teams, whatever. But do you learn from film yourself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And listen, and this is really important. There isn't anything that I'm going to ask my players to do that I won't also do myself. So if I'm asking them, review film, get in here and work harder. These are skills that you don't have that you need to build. I am doing the same kind of reflective exercises for myself after games, in preparation, specifically when, I'll look at different lineups that we have in or timeouts that I've called or situational things that, I'm not in the moment, I know what we did, but I don't know that we prepared for that moment. And so like the games will show me, all right, what are things that we need to work a little bit more on, but also were we correctly prepared for this moment? Have I been preparing them? How did I manage our substitutions? How did I manage our timeouts? And that's been really valuable for me and has really helped me grow.
We were talking earlier, and you're a student of leadership, and you're constantly learning about how to lead. And I understand you have a leadership council. Uh, who's on it, and how do you earn the right to be on your council?
I think we have 5 or 6 of our players on there. Most of them are veterans. So I have my seniors, my 2 seniors that have been here with me 4 and 5 years. I have our graduate transfer. She's on there. I have our senior that Justine Pizzat. She's on there. She's been here for 3 years. Michaela, our sophomore, and then Madison Green, another sophomore, who are rising leaders, right? So they really chose them. I had them list out who they thought the leaders were. It was anonymous on our team. And then after getting their input, I put the people in the room that I felt like would be the best voices for the team, right? So you can't, for us, I wanted to make sure that we had enough leaders in the room where we could continue to build it after our seniors graduate. But also who would be the right voice for the right person at the right time. And that can't just be 1 or 2 people. It's too much work, right? There has to be people in there that can be that for the team, but that also can be that for each other. And the lessons that they're learning together, I thought were valuable for them as well. They are also still growing as leaders. So it was more of a training, like let's train you how to lead yourself first and lead each other first. And then we can talk about how we're going to lead the team together.
You mentioned earlier when you were a child, you had a great role model. Your mother was a trailblazer in women's basketball, highly accomplished. I know that she's in the Hall of Fame in North Carolina, but she said, "Hey, I'm going to go out and blaze my own trail." Which I love. Do you have another story from your childhood that really kind of tells us a little bit about how you became the leader you are today?
There's so many people that were part of my childhood, and I think there's a lot of stories that made me who I am. And what I remember is that there were people who saw me, right? So there was a coach. He ran a bunch of camps, Austin Lehman, who challenged me really hard. And I would go to his camps, and I was always playing with the boys, or he would compare me to the boys, or he would put me up against the boys. And it was an impossible feat for me, right? Like, I'm not going to win this. And he would continue to push me to be better and to not compare myself. And what I thought was really cool about, and I tell you that specific story, he still keeps in contact with me. He still text messages me. He watches the games. He has his opinions. And I love that because that's how he always was. But at that time in my life, I felt like, and he was one of them, there were several, he really saw me. He didn't gloss over, all the awards and let me make this easy for you. And you're so great. He really saw me and pushed me and challenged me. And he would also comfort me in moments where he knew that I needed it. with just a conversation or something like that. But I think that my leadership style really lends itself towards like, I wasn't quite sure. I knew I wanted to be great, but I was also being pulled in different directions at that time in my life. Like, am I going to be a cheerleader? Do I want to be, am I going to be a part of this group with all the girls that are all really cool? Or am I going to be in the gym and do what I'm going to do? And so when there are people that see you for who you are and continue to pour into you, that made a difference. And I feel like that has made me the leader that I am because I try to do the same thing here.
And you went on to become an incredible player at UConn, but your career was riddled with injuries. I couldn't believe it when I found out you tore your ACL 5 times. I mean, by the age of 23. What did going through that kind of physical adversity teach you about leading through pain?
You got to take care of your body as an athlete. And I just thought I could outwork everything. I thought the harder I worked, the better I would be. And that just wasn't the case. I needed to take a little bit better care of my body. I needed to fuel it better. There was things I could have done differently, but I was so stubborn because I wanted to get back out on the court. I mean, I was stubborn as a mule. And I don't know why I had 5 ACLs. I just knew that I was determined to play. And another reason why I'm so grounded in my faith now is like, yeah, no, I'm tapping you on the shoulder. And if you need me to tap you another time, I will, but this isn't your path. And leading through pain, I'm not afraid of pain. I loved playing really hard. I felt like that helped my team. The people around me inspired them because I would play through anything. I'd wrap everything up and tape everything. I got so mad if I got pulled out of practice, but it gave me an idea of what it looks like to be a great leader because I'm going to show up for you. I'm going to show up. But also I need to learn how to do it maybe in a more intelligent way. It turned me into the path of coaching. So it was really hard to go through all those injuries. I didn't get to play professionally. That's something that I will never be able to do. But now I get to be part of someone else's dream to play professionally. And I think that's what I was built for.
What was it like, though, before you developed the maturity where you can say, I think that's what I was built for? When your dream is shattered, you want to play in the NBA, but you don't get to play in the WNBA. When your whole world seems to like just get crash, because how'd you deal with that?
Yeah, I didn't deal with it very well. I was pretty angry. I don't think I watched basketball for like a year after my last ACL. I was trying to finish school, had no idea what I wanted to do. I was kind of hopping around from thing to thing and not really invested in any of it. And it was all in Connecticut while I was rehabbing. But what it did give me as I came out of that fog a little bit was number one, I am not like my identity is not just a basketball player. And I didn't know that until that point. I had not built an identity outside of being a basketball player, which led me to my faith, right? It led me to this can't be what happens when I don't get things that I work for. This isn't who I am. I am something much greater than this, much bigger than this. My purpose is much greater than this. But it also fueled me to want to coach because I feel like every athlete needs that. At some point, whether it's on your terms or not, the ball is going to stop bouncing. You're not going to be able to go back out on the field. Your career as an athlete is going to be over. Now, what's next for you? Who are you after that? And we need to make sure that they can define that here and now, especially in the world that we live in with social media and all the narratives that people are going to want to talk about a bad performance, a good performance. You are not that. You are a great basketball player, but you're a human being with lots of other skill and talents, a child of God, all the things. And you're going to have a long career after you stop playing sports. We got to figure out what that passion is for you and pour into that as well.
You're blessed enough to become a coach, and pursue this goal of yours to help others get to the WNBA or just become the kind of a good person. I love that as being the one thing that you picked. Just be a good person.
Be a good person.
I think that's really cool. And you know what it takes to build a dynasty. I mean, you've seen it close up front and personal when you were at UConn. I was just curious if you had a story from Coach Ariemo where you really got that moment where he kind of changed the way you think about leadership just by what he did as you were learning how to coach? Was there, do you recall a story where you go, whoa?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. He was masterful and is masterful at pressing the right buttons to get every single ounce of potential out of players. But one of the things I remembered when I coached, when I played for him, I just thought he was angry all the time. Like, why is he so angry all the time? He comes in here pissed off, and it's like, I don't understand that. When I started working for him in the meetings that we would have, it was like, he really cares. And he's trying to figure out ways that he can show up and make the team better. And because at that time we were so good, I mean, we went on like 111 game win streak, and no one could even come close to beating us when we played really well. He felt like he had to be the opponent. I'm the opponent. I have to be really hard on them every single day so they don't get caught up in all of this stuff. And there were several practices. I remember one where we were playing 5-on-8 in the half court, and he was allowing the 8 defenders to trap the offensive players, and we weren't allowed to dribble. And it was like turnover, kicked ball. Like it was mass chaos. And I walked over to him and I said, listen, like, we're not gonna. He goes, I know. I said, okay. He's like, this is supposed to be hard. It's good. And then, I think, when we got back the next game we played, it felt like we were playing 5-on-0 because everything was so much easier. It was just a very eye-opening moment for me, and like how we continued to make things so impossible for our team so that they could actually achieve success.
And so now, what is it going to take for you to build a dynasty at Vandy? I mean, you're obviously, building your program up. Great year, coach of the year, all this. I mean, how do you take it to that kind of consistency?
The world that we live in now, the landscape that we live in now, it's I have to do my job really well. We have to recruit great talent, and we have to coach, and and we're going in the right direction. But what it takes to build a dynasty is much bigger than that in college sports anymore. I think one of the things that I will never, ever, no matter what the landscape does or changes or, stays, is like build relationships. Because in the world that we live in now, kids can just jump from school to school. And, and they're treated, these are kids in college, or we're treating them like commodities. And it's a great opportunity that they have to earn money. And it's the right thing. NIL, like their March Madness is one of the most money-making tournaments, sporting events in the world. So it's the right thing. But we still have to build relationships and teach them how to overcome adversity, teach them the value of delayed gratification. That comes through community and leadership. It comes through investment from our athletic director, our department, our chancellor, our university. It doesn't look like dollars. You need that too. But you need people. You need to surround them with people so that you can continue to retain athletes, coach them, continue to bring in talent because they see that we're different. We have all of these things that they need to be great. And my hope is that as we continue on the path that we're on, that people will recognize that we are different, and that we will be able to build a dynasty, because that is the goal.
This has been so much fun, Shea, and I want to have some more with my lightning round of questions. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
3 words that best describe you.
Aggressive, humble, smart.
If you could be one person for a day beside yourself, who would it be?
My husband. Sometimes I just want to know what he's thinking.
Your biggest pet peeve?
People chewing gum like this.
I hate that too. Who would play you in a movie?
How about Jennifer Garner?
There you go. What's the toughest arena to play in?
I would say Gamble Pavilion or South Carolina.
Who's the best teammate you ever had?
So it's probably a tie. Carla Berube, Stacey Hansmeyer, Paige Sauer.
What's something you've been curious about lately that has absolutely nothing to do with work?
I am so curious about music and art and how people, is that something you can learn or is that a gift? Because I would love to learn how to play an instrument or how to be some sort of creative, but I'm not sure I have that. So I have been curious about that lately.
What's the one thing you do just for you?
I go to yoga.
Besides your family and friends, what's your most prized possession?
My wedding ring. It was handed down from my grandmother. And funny story, it's a Vanderbilt diamond.
Is that right? That is
It's
so
a
cool.
Vanderbilt diamond.
If I turned on the radio on your team bus on the way to a big game, what would I hear?
Some songs with words that you should not be hearing anywhere.
What's something about you few people would know?
I'm a vegan.
What's one of your daily rituals, something that you never miss?
My time with God, my devotional time.
Well, that was great lightning round. Good job. And I just have a few more questions and I'll let you go. Uh, you've been very open, Shea, about your battle with anorexia in high school and in college. And that's a fight you've said never fully goes away. How does having walked through something like that, which is so personal and so difficult, how has that impacted the way you lead and care for people around you?
Number one is you just never know what people are going through. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so relationship oriented, because I feel like I can't be a great coach if I don't know you. And I need to be able to build trust in that way. Also, when you lead young women, there's a lot going on in the world. And I don't think it makes our young women weak. But one of the reasons I got myself into trouble is just by comparison. I just compared and I thought that if I could control this one thing, then it would make me better. And I don't want my young women, I can't control that part of it, but I don't want them to ever compare themselves to anyone else. I want them to be secure in who they are. And it changed me as a human, but it changed me as a leader. So I think in order for people to really believe that and to dive into uncertainty and failure with a good attitude, they need to know that they're cared for, that they're loved regardless of the result, that we're going to continue to push them. But that's really, really important to me, because I think if they don't have that, if our young women don't have that, then it could be anything that derails them. And I don't want their talent, their potential future, their gifts to ever be derailed by something so easy as a relationship could take care of.
You and your husband, Tom Garrick, who played in the NBA, coached at Vanderbilt before you arrived here, and now coaches alongside you every day. You have a very unique partnership for sure. I mean, what have you two built together that you couldn't have built alone?
Everything that we have right now. I mean, our lives, our family, this program, I am not nearly, as experienced as he is. And he had a lot of head coaching experience. I had a lot of championship experience. He was a really great player as well. He was a sitting Division I head coach when we took this job together. And, there's a lot going on around. Like he's working technically for me, but that's not how we approach it. And honestly, that's not how I approach it with any of my staff members. We are working together, but there isn't anything that I do that his hand isn't in, and vice versa. We're just a really good team. And, we complement each other well. Our styles are very different, and that can be challenging, but that's the beauty of it, is that whatever our team needs, whatever our staff needs, either one of us has it. You just have to know who to go to, but we're solid. And in terms of our family, I mean, we have this huge family. We have lots of people coming up this weekend. We should have something so special, both at work and at home, that we would never have if it weren't for each other.
And you're parents and you're a mom. And how do you think about leadership at home, Shea?
We're pretty traditional at home. I love being a mom and a wife. And I think we're just partners as well, but respectful. We want to make sure that we show our daughter what it looks like to have a healthy relationship, to have a healthy love, to have healthy boundaries, and to understand what it looks like to be loved and cared for. She is, she's got it tough because our eyes are always on her. But we are unified as parents, and I absolutely love being a wife and a mom. It has just changed my life.
And your mom travels with you to the games. You have your mom come to the games. How has that relationship changed and evolved over time? Because I imagine when you were a kid, you were independent. You wanted to get to point, and now here you are back together. What's that feeling like when you see your mom in the arena?
It's really cool. as you get older, and my mom, she's going to be 73 this year. And our roles have changed. Our lives have changed. Our relationship has changed. But she laid a lot of the foundation of what women's basketball is experiencing right now in general, right? So like she played at North Carolina and she had to drive the bus, and she'll tell you all the stories. Like she had 4 different coaches in 4 years and they didn't have a locker room. And now all the things that I put her through when I was tough to raise. I told you I was stubborn. I put her through a lot. And now seeing her be able to be part of my daughter's life and my life and witness like firsthand what's happening with our sport and the eyes that are on it and the things that these players are experiencing and the joy that she has and all of that has been so cool. It's been so cool.
And, here you are now, you're one of the best coaches in college basketball. And you think back, walking into Vanderbilt 5 years ago, what have you become as a leader through the process that you weren't when you walked in the door? I mean, how have these last 5 years really changed you as a leader?
Truly, because I say this word, but I truly am this word now. I'm resilient. As a leader now, resilient. And I think that really matters because, so many things can change from year to year. And I know who we are here. I know what we're trying to accomplish. And I know that it's not going to always be what we want. But we understand that. And we know that as long as we continue to do things the right way to get the right people in here, then nothing's going to get in our way. So I'm not going to let the ups and downs, fly me off the handle or, get us into a place where the weather's not good up here. The weather's great because we're resilient.
Last question. What's one piece of advice you'd give to anyone who wants to be a better leader?
Remember that you're not alone. To study leadership, to listen to your podcasts, to read books, to remind yourself daily and however that looks like of who you are outside of your leadership role, but to continue to give yourself tools to be a better leader. And in order to do that, you have to have self-awareness. That makes all the difference, whether it's for yourself or people around you. Keep your head down, do the work, have self-awareness, know who you are outside of that. And my guess is when you pick your head back up, you'll be a better leader.
Well, Coach, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation. I wish you all the best in this tournament and the tournaments ahead. I know the outcome will be what it's going to be, but the process that you have and your belief in people and the way that you're supposed to get there, it's definitely textbook in any leadership book that I've ever read.
Well, thank you. I'm honored. I really enjoyed this time with you. Thank you so much.
David, as an alumna of Vanderbilt, I got to start this debrief conversation by saying anchor down.
Did you actually go to Vanderbilt? I didn't know you were that smart.
Shocking to most people, I did in fact go to Vanderbilt.
My daughter went to Vanderbilt too, so you guys have that in common.
I loved this conversation with Shea. Obviously, I'm a huge Vanderbilt fan, but what she's done with the program is so impressive. And David, I love conversations anytime we have them with coaches in sports. And I want to get your perspective on some of the things that Shea talked about in this episode and how our listeners can apply those insights to their own leadership and to their own life. And the first thing I want to talk about is, the importance of a leader knowing when they need to be present and when they need to leave the room. Shea talks about the process of how her team developed their own team values. And she says that things really shifted when she left the room and when she wasn't around for that conversation. As a leader, how do you know when you should step away from something so that it can grow and flourish?
Well, sometimes your team will tell you to. We had a podcast recently with John Donahoe, the former CEO of Nike. And, he talked about how his team went off for an offsite and they were meeting and they said, "Hey, John, we'd like you to step out because we need to talk together as a team." And when he came back in, they had developed a contract on how they were going to work together. And because they felt like that they hadn't been working together the way how they needed to work together to get the kind of performance that the company needed. And John said it was so powerful because they came to their own conclusion. I've always believed that, any idea that someone comes up with on their own, there's more ownership of it. And, you know, I think, there are times when a leader needs to step away and let their team get the ownership that's required. And, I've done that in times where I knew there was a lot of strife on the team over a particular issue. And I walked away so that they could have the comfort of getting it all out without me having to judge. And then when I came back, they had the solution. I think in Shay's case, she wanted people to really own the team culture. She wanted her players to really step up. She said she got to pick one of the core behaviors that they wanted to have, but they developed the others. And by doing that, you follow what I think is the law of leadership, which you got to remember: if you have no involvement, you have no commitment. So she could come in and say, "Hey, look, these are the 5 behaviors that we need to do," and the players said, "Oh, okay, okay, okay." But the players didn't develop; they didn't have any chance to have any input. They wouldn't own it. She's smart enough to know that if they come up with the behaviors, the people will own it. And I think that's the real point here. Leaders need to be present. Obviously, you got to be present. You got to be out there. You got to let people know you're with them. You got to be a coach. That's something that we all need to do. But you got to find whatever way you can to get ownership of something. And sometimes that means you don't need to be there. And, I think that's a very powerful thing to remember.
It reminds me of the stories that you tell, David, about your time at Yum when you would go up to someone and say, how do you think I'm doing? And they would say, oh, David, you're doing a great job. And then you would ask them again and say, how do you think I'm doing? And they would say, oh, David, you're doing a great job. And then you'd ask them a third time. And then finally they would say, well, I think that maybe you could do this a little bit differently. So as a leader, it's the same concept. You have to understand that a lot of times if you're present, you can't really get down to the nitty gritty of what's happening or what people are really believing unless you give them that time to discover it on their own.
Yeah, and you got to have a process that'll get it out of people. And that's why I would always say ask 3 questions. Sometimes you have to ask 4 to get it out of there. The other thing you have to do with a team is you always have to be able to sniff out the conflict. One of the great things that you need to do as a leader is you got to be good at really driving productive conflict. And if there's issues on the team, you got to get those things out on the table so it can be resolved. But that's a great example when the leader has to be in the room, because people would probably be just smiling at each other, acting like everything's great. But the leader knows what people are really thinking, because a lot of times the leaders they have their people come into their office and tell them what they're thinking. But then when they get in the room with everybody else, they don't get the conflict out there. And so if you know what's going on with your team, you can make sure that the issues are raised so you can have the kind of productive conflict that'll get you to the best solution.
Another thing that's really obvious about Shea and the way that she coaches is that she never wants her team to define itself by their results, whether they're good or bad. But of course, in sports and in business, results matter, obviously. How, as a leader, do you walk that line?
I think she doesn't want people to define themselves just by the results that they generate. But believe me, the key there is just by. Okay, just by the results. Because believe me, Shea likes winning. I mean, she is very, very competitive. She's been a winner her entire life, and she's got this team now on a roll, and it's taken her 5 years to really build the kind of program she wants at Vanderbilt. So she loves winning much more than she did when she was an assistant coach at Pitt, where she was losing all the time. When she talked about learning how to lose, and you learn the best way to learn how to lose is to learn from when you lose, and that helped her become a better coach. But I think what Shea is really saying is, yeah, come on, team, we want to put wins on the board, but I'm here with you because I care about you as a person. I care about the whole person, not just part of you, not the basketball part. I want to make you a better person. I want you to leave Vanderbilt with a great degree. I want you to leave Vanderbilt with a great experience with your team members. I want you to look back on these days and say, this is where I really developed and became a better person. And I think the best coaches, the best leaders, let people know that they care about them. And they don't just care about their output, they care about them as a person. And that's what she's really saying. And when people know that you care about them, Sam Walton said, and I've said this many times, nobody will care about you until you care about them. When people know that you care about them, they're going to be committed to you. They're going to be inspired by you, and you're going to get much better results. So in the end, that focus on the person is basically building people capability, helping that person be a better person. And as you know, I always say the formula for success is put people capability first, then you satisfy more customers, get more, and that's how you get make more money. Care about your players. That's how you get more wins. That's how you end up being in the NCAA tournament and potentially winning a national championship.
That spirit of caring about the whole person is really part of Shea's demeanor as a person and as a coach. And it kind of segues into this next topic that I want to debrief with you, David. And I love how in the episode, Shea says that she is the weather, meaning her mood as a leader really sets the tone for everyone else. Explain that concept.
I love this idea of she says, I am the weather. I always say that's the casting the shadow of leadership. She recognizes that what she does really projects the kind of energy that will be transferred over to whoever she touches that day. And so she tries to get herself in the right place so that when she goes to work, she goes to the gym, she's going to be positive. She's going to have that contagious energy that inspires. She's going to be able to pump people up. She's not going to be the Eeyore, the downer. She doesn't want that to happen. So for her, the way how she does it is she relies on her faith. And that a lot of people do that. They'll spend private time, they'll pray, and they'll be thankful and they'll get gratitude. But she finds a way to make sure that the weather's good, that she's got a great weather report. She's the weatherman's saying, it's sunny out there, no clouds in the sky, and we're going to get things done. And so that doesn't mean she's always positive all the time, because there's time when she's got to show some frustration with the team, and that's when those storms coming in, man, because you have made Shea too happy, so you better get your act together. So she has some stormy weather every now and then. We all do, okay? But I think by and large she wants to come in and be positive. And we talked a little bit earlier about how she just conveys the power of belief in the person. And she's interested in the whole person, and I saw that at the end of the interview with me, because she didn't just get off the mic and leave the computer. She said, hey, you know what, that was really fun, that was really good, I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot from listening to your podcast in the past. And do you have any advice for me from what you heard?
I love
And what did
that.
that show? That show that she cared about me to a certain extent as a person, or at least she cared about what I had to say. And that made me feel very valued. And I bet she does that with everybody she touches. And that's why she's great. She's partners with her husband, who coaches. And he's been a professional coach. She said he's a lot better coach than she is. But she went on and on about the power they have together.
Yeah.
And she knows how to make people feel valued and respected. And it's genuine. There's nothing fake about this woman. She's a very genuine person. I'm honored I got a chance to meet her.
I love this concept too, David, because you don't have to have an official leadership position in order to assume this role as setting the tone for the people around you. And I think the more that we know how our attitude and disposition and outlook and perspective affects those around us, the more we're able to lean into our own strengths and help other people lean into theirs as well. So I love this concept of being the weather. And like you said, I mean, she's like, there are days when I go in the locker room and my players better get ready for a big old gust of wind because they know that I'm not going to be all sunshine today.
And the other thing too, Kula, is think about your energy level when you smile. It's kind of hard to be down when you smile. If you force yourself to smile, it's kind of hard to be down. We happen to work with a guy who smiles all the time. His name is Tim Schur, and he's just so positive. It's ridiculous. I've never met anybody so positive in my life. But it's amazing how he wins people over through his positive energy and his smiles. And, because people want to be around people like that. And, he has a contagious energy that makes it work. And I think that's what all leaders really want to have.
Well, David, another great episode of How Leaders Lead. Anchor down. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.